Alright, what is up guys? Today we are filming from my phone because I forgot my camera at home because I'm a professional. Also, I forgot my bank card at home, which I only noticed after I threw in petrol. What I'm trying to say is it's going great. I've been trying to make part 2 of this video for days, and I've actually filmed like an hour's episode. But there's so much information, I'm struggling to figure out what format I'm going to do this series in because there's so much information. And then I thought maybe I should just narrow everything down and just give you the basics, or, I was trying to decide. Also, I got a bit upset whilst trying to film this video, like part 2 of this video, because this whole situation pisses me off. There's just no better way to say it. And then I got a comment on a video that I did about this subject, and the person said, I am #Team Blake because this is what happens when women come forward, and now the big wigs, meaning Justin and Jamie, is trying to silence her, and they use the same PR team as Johnny Depp. What does that tell you? And I'm like, first of all, the big wigs in this situation is Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. That is just how it is. They are the big wigs here. Blake Lively was the biggest name in this film, and as the evidence shows, she leveraged that name on more than one occasion. Also, the fact that they brought up the Johnny Depp case and verbatim quoted a headline from one of the mainstream media newspaper situations shows to me why this case is important. Because to this day, and it leaves my flabber absolutely ghosted, to this day there are people who still side with Amber Heard, and I cannot fathom that. With all that being said, I am not here on this platform talking about this case just for the heck of it. Yes, I'm a comedy content creator. Yes, I like to make people laugh. Sometimes I take serious subjects and I make little jokes about it because that's how I cope. But more than that, this is important to me because I feel like it's something that's important to talk about. With the whole Me Too movement, which was supposed to be something to give a safe platform for women to come forward, a lot of issues with that system also came forward, unfortunately. And every time when it comes out and it's proven that a woman lied about something like this, it is so harmful to actual victims. And I can tell you, as someone who was a victim of SA as a 16-year-old girl, I can speak on this. I can speak on my experiences because I also know no 2 cases are the same. No 2 people has the same coping mechanisms. But I can say from my point of view how difficult it was to speak up. You will never find me saying, why did she wait so long to speak up? Because I understand. I understand the fear of coming forward, the fear of not being believed, the fear of someone saying that it's your fault. I understand that on a personal level. It took me a couple of years to finally tell my mom and dad about what happened. And I'm very thankful and lucky that they were so incredibly supportive. But some of my fears also came true when another female family member basically told me that it was my fault. Even though I was a 16-year-old girl and this man was almost 50 and in a position of power, it was awful. Every time I hear of something like this happening to someone, it breaks my heart. It's awful. And every time when it comes out that someone lied about something like this, it absolutely breaks my heart and it makes me so angry because it makes it difficult for real victims to be believed. That is what my issue is. And the concept, I'm sorry, but the concept of believe all women, how does that make sense? Really? All women? Trying to create a narrative where we say that women don't lie. There's no woman out there who's the actual monster. I feel like that is the sexist statement. And while we are out here trying to create a world where we raise our daughters, I'm saying our, I don't have children, but where we raise our daughters, the women of tomorrow, to be self-confident, to stand up for themselves, to know their worth, which is amazing. But at the same time, can we take a second to think about what of the boys of today? What of our sons? What of the men of tomorrow? Are you not terrified for their future? If you are the parent of a young boy, does it not terrify you to know that their entire lives can be ruined based off of a false accusation? Simply an accusation can ruin a man's life. And I feel like it's something we need to talk about. And when it comes out that women lied or twisted the truth or bent the narrative in order to get what they want or in order to get revenge or whatever the case may be, I feel like it's something we need to take seriously. And I don't care if this is controversial, but I feel like if it is proven that a woman lied, she should get the same punishment as what the man would have gotten had he been guilty. Like if she accuses him of SA and he would have gone to prison for this amount of years, if it's proven that she lied, she needs to go to prison. There is no excuse for doing something like that. It pisses me off. Now, I know this is quite a long and a personal intro, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. I'm not against women. I'm not anti-feminist. I'm anti-toxic feminism. And with the Me Too movement, one thing that I will never forget and that really left such a bad taste in my mouth is how people treated Terry Crews when he came forward about what happened to him. You know Terry Crews from Brooklyn Nine-Nine? I absolutely love him, but that's neither here nor there. He came forward and told the world about what happened to him with a WME executive who grabbed him by his personal business, and when he reported it, when he tried to get justice served, they tried to bribe him, and also they said it was nothing, it was just roughhousing. When he came forward, first of all, there were women saying this movement is not for you, you are taking women's spotlight, this is not for you. Also, there were people who told him, you're such a big guy, why didn't you just punch him? And I'm just thinking the hypocrisy. A victim is a victim, and an abuser is an abuser. Can we stop pretending that women can't be the bad guy and that men can't be the victim of a terrible woman? Because it happens, okay? Now that I got that out of the way. As I said in part 1, when Blake Lively came forward with her accusations and this whole smear campaign and everything, my first instinct was to believe her. I was like, this guy is a creep, and I'm glad she came forward, what? When I read the evidence and Justin Baldoni's counter lawsuit, not just based off what he said, but based off evidence, I changed my outlook. And that's perfectly fine. If you start out on a case due to the fact that your gut instinct is to believe a woman when they come forward, because what type of person would lie to about something like this? And when you are confronted with evidence, it's fine to say, well, I didn't have all the information. So for that reason, I decided that no, I'm not going to just bullet point and do a quick little video telling you the basics of everything. I'm going to go through everything because I see a lot of false information being spread around. I'm seeing a lot of things that came out initially and then we got more information. So I really want to make this series as detailed as possible. We're going to go through the lawsuits, and the series is going to be multiple parts. I made peace with that. blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm so professional. It's nothing important. It's going to be multi-parts. I made peace with that. We're going to see in every episode how far we get into it. And by the end of this, you're going to know exactly what's going on and you can make your own decisions on where you stand. That is where I'm at. Alright, I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover on the intro. And I'm going to try my best to, still keep it entertaining and make a grappie here and there where I feel like it fits. But that is not the point of this series. The point of this series is not to grab onto something that's heavy in the media and to get a lot of followers and to get paid. That's not the point. It would be amazing if I can get to a point where I can monetize on YouTube. That would be amazing because creating YouTube content does take a lot of time. So I would love that. But honestly, this topic to me is important. It is important, and we need to start keeping people who make false accusations accountable because they are so harmful to everyone. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to start off. Let me just get my tablet here. Oh my hat, guys, I've been going through hundreds and hundreds of pages of legal documents in the last couple of days, as if I have nothing to do with my time, as if I'm not busy trying to open a studio, as if I don't have four stand-up comedy shows coming up in the next 2 months, as if I'm not so busy that I feel like I don't know where to fight or lose. Now I'm busy with this. But it is fascinating, it's interesting, it is important, we need to talk about it, and I want you guys to have all of the information when you decide on what side you want to air. Alright, so in front of me, I have Blake Lively's initial lawsuit that she filed, I think on the 31st of December. I have Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, and I have Blake Lively's amended lawsuit. And then I have the relevant timeline of events that Justin Baldoni's team put on a website for people to download so that they can be armed with all of the information. So let's just jump right in. Where are we going to start? That is the question. Okay, so we're going to start off with Blake Lively's lawsuit, her first lawsuit. We're going to try and go through it as quickly as possible, and maybe I will interject from time to time, but we are starting off with Blake Lively's lawsuit, the first one. So it starts off saying, on January 4th, 2024, prior to resuming the film It Ends With Us, following guild strikes, an all-hands meeting was convened in New York to address the hostile work environment that had nearly derailed production of the film. Attendees of the meeting was Justin Baldoni, who is the co-chairman and co-founder of Wayfair Studios, as well as the director, executive producer, and actor in the lead role of Ryle Kincaid. Jamie Heath, the chief executive officer of Wayfarer and the producer of the film, Angie Giannetti, the film's representative for its distributor Sony Pictures Entertainment, Alex Sachs, the producer of the film, Todd Black, a producer on the film, and Miss Lively, who played the role of Lily Bloom in the film. Miss Lively also had the agreed upon right to have a representative present. She chose her husband, given that the meeting was about repeated sexual harassment and other disturbing behavior by Baldoni and Heath. As discussed in detail down below, Miss Lively was forced to address concerns about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct with them directly, and began doing so months before filming began. The concerns she raised were not only for herself but for other female cast and crew, some of whom also spoken up. On January 4, the meeting occurred only after Wayfarer had rebuffed Miss Lively's efforts repeatedly. During the January 4th meeting, the parties discussed in detail the inappropriate conduct that Miss Lively, her employees, and other cast and crew experienced in the hands of Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. After the list below was reviewed and discussed in its entirety, all parties present agreed that the outlined conduct would cease. So they give here a list of 30 points that we will discuss in a later video. The meeting was an essential step in the process the parties had agreed to several months before to allow the cast and crew to safely resume production of the film. In mid-November 2023, the parties had agreed in writing to implement a list of protections enumerated in a contract entitled Protections for Return of Production, which included 17 provisions designed to require Wayfarer to cease on-set behavior of Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. One of these provisions required an all-hands meeting to confirm and approve a plan for implementation that would be adhered to for the physical and emotional safety of Miss Lively, her employees, and the rest of the cast and crew moving forward. After receiving the document, Wayfarer responded that Wayfarer Sony Production respectfully acknowledged that Miss Lively has concerns regarding safety, professionalism, and workplace culture. Although our perspective differs in many aspects, ensuring a safe environment for all is paramount, irrespective of differing viewpoints. Regarding your outline requests, we find most of them not only reasonable but also essential to benefit all of the parties involved. So this was the response from Wayfarer to the list of 17. Remember that they attached a list of 30 points that they said Wayfarer agreed to, but they only sent a list of 17 points that Wayfarer signed. But in the meeting, apparently they discussed 30 points. I don't know. We'll get into the response from Baldoni's side in their lawsuit and in the relevant timeline of events. Okay. At the end of the January 4th meeting, having discussed at length the details of concerns that had been expressed by Ms. Lively and others, the parties agreed to implement and follow the protections for return to production to ensure that the film could be completed, marketed, and released safely and successfully, and it was. Production of the film resumed on the 5th of January and concluded on the 9th of February 2024. The film has been a resounding success, says Blake's team. Leading up and in connection with the release of the film during the summer of 2024, Mrs. Lively and fellow cast members promoted the film in accordance with the marketing plan created and delivered by the film's distributor, Sony, which summarized in the talking points attached as Exhibit C. Ms. Lively and other cast members were under a contractual obligation to engage in media, press, marketing activities, and render promotional services in accordance with the marketing plan. The marketing plan directed the cast to focus more on Lily's strength and resilience as opposed to describing the film as a story about DV, and to avoid talking about this film that makes it feel sad or heavy. It's a story of hope. In the days leading up to the film's release, Mr. Baldoni abruptly pivoted away from the film's marketing plan and the types of publicity activities in which he had previously participated. What the public did not know was that Mr. Baldoni and his team did so in an effort to explain away why many of the film's cast and crew unfollowed Mr. Baldoni on social media and were not appearing with him in public. To that end, he and his team used DV survivor content to protect his public image and described in detail further below. It's very hard for me not to interject in here with what we learn later on, so I'm not going to do that now. Keep in mind everything we hear here and what we learn here and what mindset you would be in if you read this for the first time without having any other context. And then as we go on with the series, we will talk more about the countersuit and the relevant timeline of events. So I'm not going to interject here and describe to you all the bullshit yet. We'll get to that. I'm just gonna go through it as it is. What the public also did not know was that at the beginning of the multi-tiered plan that Mr. Baldoni and his team described as social manipulation designed to destroy Miss Lively's reputation, That plan was backed by virtually unlimited resources. Wayfarer's co-founder, co-chairman, and leading financier is multi-billionaire Steve Sorowitz, who divulged in a film's New York premiere on August 6 that he was prepared to spend $100 million to ruin the lives of Mrs. Baldoni and her family. With that backing, Mr. Baldoni and his Wayfarer associates embarked on a sophisticated press and digital plan in retaliation for Miss Lively exercising her legally protected rights to speak up about their misconduct on set, with the additional objective of intimidating her and anyone else from revealing in the public what actually occurred. On the 31st of July, following the recommendation of their publicist, Jennifer Abel, Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni retained a crisis communications specialist named Melissa Nathan and her company, the Agency Group. Mrs. Nathan delivered a proposal to Mr. Baldoni which included a website to discuss, full Reddit, full social account takedowns, full social crisis team on hand for anything, engage with audiences in the right way, start threads of theories, and this is the way to be fully 100% protected. Mr. Nathan also proposed the creation of social fan engagement to go back and forth with negative accounts, helping to change narrative and stay on track. Per Mrs. Nathan, all of this must be importantly untraceable. As Mrs. Abel described, the plan was to engage in social media mitigation and proactive fan posting to counter the negative as well as social manipulation. This plan went beyond standard crisis PR. What Ms. Nathan proposed included practice known as astroturfing, which has been defined as the practice of publishing opinions or comments on the internet, in the media, etc., that appear to come from an ordinary member of the public but actually comes from the particular company or political group. On the 2nd of August 2024, TAG circulated a scenario planning document to Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath and others, which described preparation and strategy should Miss Lively and her team make her grievances public. Mrs. Nathan's plan proposed strategies to advance misleading counter-narratives, including pushing Mrs. Nathan's narrative that Mrs. Lively had less than favorable reputation, proposing to explore planting stories about the weaponization of feminism, and misleadingly blaming Miss Lively for production members' job losses. Initially, Mr. Baldoni expressed concern that TAG's written plan was insufficiently aggressive to protect him. They are putting it in umpalumpikies. Writing to Mr. Heath and Mrs. Abel, he said that he was not in love with the document they sent. Not sure I'm feeling the protection I felt on the call. He expressed this concern with Mrs. Nathan and her colleagues. In response, Mr. Heath attempted to reassure Mr. Baldoni that they had found the right people for this complaint. In Mr. Heath's words, the most important part of this is how quickly they can shut things down and play stories to your favor. Then on the legal document, they post a text message thread. How did they get these text messages and what is the story behind these text messages? You're going to have to stick around. We'll get to that in Baldoni's lawsuit. Like I said, I don't want to jump ahead. It's very hard for me reading this. It makes me actually so angry, but I want you guys to find things out in the correct order, so let's move on. Later that day, Mrs. Abel and Mrs. Nathan exchanged the following text messages expressing that Mr. Baldoni wants to feel like Miss Lively can be buried. Miss Abel and Mrs. Nathan agreed that of course they would do just that, but could not say so in writing. We can't write anything down to him. We can't write, we will destroy her. Imagine if documents saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. And then again, they post text messages in the document. Mrs. Nathan followed this by assuring Miss Abel, "You know we can bury anyone, but we can't write that to him." A few days later, on the 5th of August, Mr. Baldoni set the narrative for the social media campaign, sending Miss Abel a screenshot of a thread on X that had accused another female celebrity of bullying women. Baldoni stated, "This is what we would need." And then again, they put screenshots of text messages that we'll get to later. Mrs. Abel responded that she had just spoken to Melissa about what we discussed last night for social and digital. Mrs. Abel added, "Focus on Reddit, TikTok and IG," with reassurance that Mrs. Lively would be destroyed and buried. Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni directed Mrs. Nathan and her team to actively engage with their retaliatory social manipulation campaign. In the weeks and months that followed, with the direction and approval of Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni, the team engaged in a sophisticated, coordinated and well-financed retaliation plan. The retaliation campaign relied on more than just publicists and crisis management spinning stories. They also retained subcontractors, including a Texas-based contractor named Jed Wallace, who weaponized a digital army around the country from New York to Los Angeles to create, seed, and promote content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and the internet. The Baldoni Wayfarer team would then feed pieces of this manufactured content to unwitting reporters, making content go viral in order to influence public opinion and thereby cause an organic pile-up. To safeguard against the risk of Mrs. Lively ever revealing the truth about Mr. Baldoni, the Baldoni Wayfarer team created, planted, and amplified and boosted content designed to eviscerate Mrs. Lively's credibility. They engaged in the same techniques to bolster Mr. Baldoni's credibility and suppress any negative content about him. On August 10th, the day after the release of the film, Mrs. Nathan's team reported that they had started to see a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative against Miss Lively. And then again, they put a screenshot of a message. The same day, Mrs. Nathan noted that as a part of this shift, the majority of socials are so pro-Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them, lol. And again, they put a little screenshot. Mrs. Nathan then bragged to Mrs. Abel that Mr. Baldoni doesn't realize how lucky he is right now, by which they are referring to their successful efforts to shut down stories that would have revealed how Mr. Baldoni's behavior, including schmexual connotation on set, had made the cast and crew and Mrs. Lively uncomfortable. Less than 1 week later, they even bragged about how they had shut down stories regarding HR complaints on set. Mrs. Nathan remarked that this went so well, it was genius. So okay, we have 4 majors standing down on the HR complaint. On the 16th of August, Mrs. Nathan circulated a Daily Mail article entitled, "Is Blake Lively set to be cancelled? String of hard-to-watch videos that have resurfaced following the tone-deaf Q&A to promote It Ends With Us could tarnish the 36-year-old star's golden Hollywood image for good." To which Mrs. Abel responded, "Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece." And Mrs. Nathan replied, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." And then they attach screenshots. As their own words reveal, the purpose of the social manipulation plan was twofold. One, it aimed to both conceal a pattern of harassment and other misconduct by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath and Wayfarer, and retaliate against Miss Lively by battling her image, harming her businesses, and causing her and her family severe emotional harm. Millions of people, including many reporters and influencers who saw these planted stories, social media posts, and other online content, had no idea that they were unwittingly consumers of a PR astroturfing and digital retaliation campaign created and funded by Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer to hurt Miss Lively. This is precisely the goal of astroturfing: to light the fire and continue to stoke conversations secretly, blurring the line between authentic and manufactured content, creating viral public takedowns. As laid out in this complaint, the Baldoni Wayfarer-led public attack of Miss Lively was the intended result of a carefully crafted, coordinated, and resourced retaliatory scheme to silence her and others from speaking about the hostile environment that Mr. Baldoni and Heath created. As such, it was not only unconscionable and breach of contract, but also illegal under both state and federal law. Mrs. Lively brings this action to hold Wayfarer and its leaders, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Mr. Sorowitz, accountable for ongoing retaliation, threats, and harm that they have caused Miss Lively, other cast and crew, and all of their families. Okay, factual allegations. A. Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath of Wayfarer engage in inappropriate and unwelcome behavior towards Miss Lively and others on the set of It Ends With Us. Mr. Baldoni launched Wayfarer along with Mr. Sorowitz in 2020. Mr. Heath serves as Wayfarer's CEO. Mr. Sorowitz is the leading financier of Wayfarer, and he and Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni are close personal friends. Under the Wayfarer banner, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath has many platforms, including the Man Enough podcast with their co-host, which they co-host. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath have positioned Wayfarer as a male feminist platform that explores gender roles, dismantles toxic masculinity, and creates a safer and judgment-free society for women. Mr. Baldoni serves not only as the co-founder and co-chairman of the studio that financed and ran production of It Ends With Us, he also served as director, executive producer, and co-lead actor, playing the role of Ryle Kincaid. As studio head and director, all actors, crew, and staff of the film, including Miss Lively, answered to Mr. Baldoni. In his word, he was the leader who sat at the top of the totem pole, while Sony was the distributor releasing the film. Wayfarer was responsible for the production, and Wayfarer was led by Baldoni and Heath. Production of the film began in early May 2023 and lasted until it was suspended in mid-June due to the Writers Guild of America strike. During this time, Mrs. Lively and other cast and crew experienced invasive, unwelcome, and unprofessional and sexually inappropriate behavior by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, because Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath held all leadership positions on production. They answered to no one and brushed off or ignored concerns Mr. Lively and others expressed. Yeah, I'm getting mad reading this. Guys, I'm getting so mad reading this, but we'll get there eventually. Mr. Baldoni ignored well-established industry protocols in filming intimate scenes and exploited the lack of controls on set to behave inappropriately. Wayfarer failed to adhere to the guild rules, as well as Miss Lively's contract and standard industry safety protocols with respect to nudity and intimate scenes, which the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of blah 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 blah. Such safeguards ignored by Wayfarer include providing performance with appropriate notice of nudity or simulated schmecks, and ensuring that consent is given free of pressure or coercion. 2. Signed nudity riders are in place, spelling out the perimeters of nudity and simulated schmeck scenes. Safe and secure working conditions that are not detrimental to a performer's health, safety, morals, and career, and the use of intimacy coordinators to observe intimate scenes. Without these protections in place, Mr. Baldoni improvised physical intimacy that had not been rehearsed, choreographed, or discussed with Mrs. Lively, with no intimacy coordinator involved. For instance, Mr. Baldoni discreetly bit and sucked on Mrs. Lively's lower lip during a scene in which he improvised numerous kisses in each take. Mr. Baldoni insisted on shooting the full scene over and over again, well beyond what would have been required on an ordinary set, and without advance notice or consent. On another occasion, Mr. Baldoni and Miss Lively were filming a slow dance scene for a montage in which no sound was recorded. Mr. Baldoni chose to let the camera roll and have them perform the scene, but did not act in character as Ryle. Instead, he spoke to Mrs. Lively out of character as himself. At one point, he leaned forward and slowly dragged his lip from her ear down to her neck as he said, "It smells so good." None of this was remotely in character or based on dialogue in the script, and nothing needed to be said because, again, there was no sound. Mr. Baldoni was caressing Miss Lively with his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. When Mrs. Lively later objected to his behavior, Mr. Baldoni's response was, "I'm not even attracted to you." I think we're going to end this episode on this point. And I'm going to mention, I don't know if I should show it now or later. I think we'll go into it later because I want to get through her complaint first. But there was, after this lawsuit came out, Justin Baldoni's side released the clip that she was referring to here. They put I think it's 9 minutes or 10 minutes that the camera was rolling. They released everything. You can go and watch that so long if you want to. But I will definitely cover it as the series goes on and as we get to Justin Baldoni's side of the story. As you can imagine, when this came out, we haven't heard anything of Justin's side. We saw this, and what we learned so far makes it sound like Justin is creepy. Like he's not in character. He drags his lips from her ear to her neck saying, "It smells so good." Ne? It sounds creepy. So I'm trying to put myself back in the mindset that I was when I first heard about this allegations. I'm struggling too though. As I'm rereading this now, it's just making me mad. And after we go through the whole series, if you are anything like me, you'll probably be mad too. So this is where we're going to end off today's video. We will resume this on the next episode. So like I said, I want to make sure that I cover absolutely all of the facts. And then from there we can go into different theories, different things that came up, speculations, all that sort of thing. But we're starting off this series with straight up, this is the lawsuit, this is what she alleges, this is what he alleges, this is what the evidence shows, and then from there we'll go into speculation and chatting about this. Alright, we'll end it off here. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, comment down below, engage with the video. It helps me a lot. Creating this sort of content is very time consuming. I love doing it. I love the filming, the editing process. I do everything myself. I don't have a team. So if I can get to a point where I can monetize on YouTube, that would be amazing. I would love that for us. Alright, so please subscribe, comment, like. I need to get that watch hours up in order to monetize. Alright, that is all I have to say today. And I'll see you on the next episode. Okay. Okay, bye.